Does this seem to be working?
Yes, it's working.
Okay, so I've just made up a number of slides here just to describe digital pinhole photography. So I'll just quickly go through the slides. I only want to take a couple of minutes. So this is the first slide. Digital pinhole photography, or how to take photos with your DSLR and a pinhole body cap. And as Debbie mentioned, this Sunday, April 26th, is Worldwide Pinhole Photography Day. And basically, those who are participating take a pinhole photo this Sunday, has to be on this Sunday, process it, resize it, and upload it to their website by midnight, June 30th. And I created today a group name, CDCC, so that if you upload to that group name, they will be all associated together. So, everyone will know that members of this club had participated. So what is a pinhole cap? For those of you who've gotten one from me, you know what they look like. It's a plastic body cap with a 1/4-inch hole in it. But within that hole is a thin sheet of brass or silver with a round, tiny, tiny hole in the middle. This one is 0.26 millimeters, and that's simply taped on the inside of the cap. And that 0.26 millimeter pinhole is optimized for the cap to sensor distance. Nikon and camera DSLRs are about the same, 0.26 millimeter, and the few people who had asked for one for a mirrorless camera, it's a smaller size pinhole because their distance is shorter. What to expect if you try to use a pinhole? Don't expect sharp focus. It simply doesn't exist with a pinhole. Pinhole is a fuzzy focused image. Do expect infinite depth of field. We'll be shooting at an f-stop approaching 150 or even higher. There's some numbers as 100 as f200. Really, it's crazy numbers because it's such a tiny, tiny pinhole. And because of that, expect to see all the dirt on your sensor. It will be very apparent if you have a very dirty sensor, so you may be removing lots of spots within Photoshop. What else to expect? On a DSLR, the viewfinder simply won't work. You can handhold your camera if the ISO is high enough where there's enough light. If you shoot near a bright light, expect dramatic colored flares, although I will caution you, don't point your camera directly at the sun. If you point it slightly off-center, you'll still get the nice flares and you won't damage the sensor. And expect some novel photos. What not to expect is don't expect sharp focus images. They simply don't exist. Do you sense a theme here? What do you need? A DSLR or mirrorless digital camera, a body cap that fits your camera, the ones that you gave a donation and you now own. A tripod is useful. It's optional. A cable release would be good if you have a tripod, but again, you can handhold with modern DSLRs and get good results. And last but not least, you need a willingness to try something different. So the kind of things, what to do to start. You got to remove the current lens from your camera. You put the pinhole body cap on it. There's a little bit of blue tape that I put on the front to protect the pinhole. Set the camera at a moderately high ISO, like 1600, 800, 600 to start. You can always drop it. Or set the camera to an auto ISO. Most cameras allow for that. What else? You should choose an aperture priority mode or manual mode and set your DSLR to live view mode on the back, and you'll have to compose your images from the rear screen. Now the problem is with such a tiny pinhole on the front, virtually no light gets through that you would be able to see. The sensor sees it, but you can't, so that's why you have to use live view mode. But on a mirrorless camera, because there's no direct optical system up to your eye, the viewfinder should work. And that's basically it. You can take a picture and experiment. After you take a photo, it's a digital camera club. You're going to do some post-processing, most likely. When you're opening in Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, you can use the texture and clarity, dehaze controls to bring up details. Remember, it's a fuzzy focus. It's simply not going to be sharp. You have tremendous depth of field, but it's going to be fuzzy. Might denoise the image to reduce any grain, especially if you're shooting at higher ISOs. And if your sensor is dirty, you'll want to remove those dirt spots. They'll be very obvious little black spots. If you're going to participate in the Worldwide Pinhole Photography Day, you'll have to resize the image to 700 pixels max, height and width, and save it as JPEG. I've got a couple of examples here. The other day, I took a handheld image, 800 ISO, in my backyard of some dandelions. The picture on the left is as shot. The picture on the right is after processing. I used Topaz denoise software. I removed the detector dirt with Photoshop. I sharpened and enhanced the color using Photoshop. Some other things, Nik HDR Effects Pro, and something called Nik 5ASA, which really can bring some details out. This is just an example. So it's not, it's not that fuzzy when you've gone through and done your processing if you can do it fairly well. I mentioned before about flare. You can get a very dramatic colored flare when almost shooting into the sun or a very bright light. Again, if you accentuate it using some of the sliders in Camera Raw or Lightroom, they can be quite pronounced. This was taken on a tripod at 100 ISO. It's a monument in a cemetery in Bodie, California. This is a picture that Lou DeVico entered last year in Worldwide Pinhole Photography Day. It's an image that he took in his backyard of a model that he himself made. I don't know exactly how large the model is, but I'm guessing it's about no longer than a foot long, but it looks like a full-size car because that you can get some dramatic perspective effects when using a small subject with a pinhole. And last but not least, I show sort of an extreme version. This is an HDR infrared pinhole image from last year's entries. Not someone from our club, but someone from Tucson, Arizona. He used a modified Nikon D810, and he had a pinhole on that, a pinhole cap, and he combined 6 images for the HDR effect. So there's a wide gamut of range that you can take of images with a pinhole. And then last but not least, I included some resources, including how to submit your image. There's a link for that, as well as a couple of other links to give you some ideas and some tips as to how to take some images. I will be making this as a PDF available, so if anyone wants to get it, you can make use of it. So that's basically it. I hope I didn't take too long. So.